Across the pond.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode from Across the Pond. I'm Amanda McKenna, your host, and today we are joined by a very, very special guest, Sir Toshi. Hi, Sir Toshi.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Toshi is a hobbyist economist, and he's got some very, very interesting theories on how the monetary system is working. And just to really get started on this, Toshi, maybe it would be good to give a bit of background as to how you originally got into this as a hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was growing up, what was sort of happening in the world at the time in terms of, geopolitics and everything like that was the Japanese economic miracle, where Japan seemed to be absolutely booming economically. Everybody was going, the economy was booming. Everybody was having a fantastic time. And that very quickly was followed by an economic crash. And then the same sort of pattern was followed with the tiger economies in South Korea, Thailand, and Indonesia, where they were being offered loans by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and everything seemed to be going fine for a few years. And then all of a sudden, that also ended in a massive economic crash. And I just remember my parents talking about it. They were discussing it, and again, there wasn't really any conclusion as to what happened. Things had gone wrong, but they weren't too sure what, or, why and who was doing it and all this kind of stuff. And that just really sort of perked my interest, because in an economic collapse, people experience economic hardship, which is where they have trouble putting food on their table and a roof over their head. And obviously, from a young child's point of view, that's really important, because the last thing you want to do is starve and sort of be out on the street. So it's a case of, okay, well, what's going on here and what's causing this? And I very quickly realized that it's not actually the amount of wealth that a country has that gives it a high standard of living. It's the access to resources. And so what you need is, one of the reasons that London became, or England in general, became such an economic powerhouse is because we became a nation of shopkeepers, a nation of competing traders that had lots to offer in a very resourceful marketplace. So what you need is something that enables small businesses to survive and thrive. Because if small businesses can't survive and thrive, then we end up with one giant mega corporation that controls everything that we have access to, which includes food. They're going to be controlling our food. They're going to be controlling what we can choose to have in our homes, and basically dictating what we can and can't have. So we need small businesses in order to have choice, because without choice, we have no freedom. So this is where the understanding of money is so important. And the reason I got into this is because obviously, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin white paper was released on the 31st of October 2008, and it was meant to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And Bitcoin appears to have solved the problem of an inflationary financial system, because it's inflation that causes all the economic and social problems that we're experiencing. And so when the narrative around Bitcoin changed in 2017 from a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, which is a medium of exchange that enables businesses to survive and thrive, to this, digital gold, not many use it, store of value, all this thing that basically made it useless. I was like, hold on a minute, what's going on here? We haven't really had a chance to explore what this thing is. And it could potentially, because I didn't know too much about it at the time, but I got the gist of it. I was just like, hold on a minute. Well, this could solve the issue of an inflationary financial system, which is the key to absolutely everything. And then obviously in 2020 we had the jibby jabby mandated on all of us, and I was like, hold on a minute, they've already told us this is a novel, as in a brand new experimental vaccine because it changes our DNA. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. Our immune systems are inextricably linked to our DNA. If you F around with your DNA, that means that your immune system is not going to be synced up to it. So that's going to cause lots of other, autoimmune diseases probably in the future. And then then I was saying, oh, well, this is, it's experimental. And I was like, well, hold on a minute. There are rules against this laws, which is the Nuremberg Code. So I was just like, hold on a minute. There is no way anybody could get around the Nuremberg Code unless they were able to bribe, the lawmakers, the politicians, and everything else. And I was like, well, hold on a minute. In order to do that, you have to have an enormous amount of economic power, and you're probably going to be controlling a bank. And that's when I was like, hold on a minute. What if there is a nefarious entity, in control of the central bank, of the world's central banking system? We could be in serious trouble here. That's my background, and that's why I'm talking to you.
That was a lot. Thank you, Toshi.
You're welcome.
First of all, I just want to get one question out of the way. Did you take the vaccine?
No fucking way. No fucking way. I'm not a guinea pig.
No, you decided that wasn't for you.
Well, if they want to experiment on me, they can pay me £1 million, and I might consider
exactly.
it.
Yeah. So if I'm getting paid, maybe.
Or maybe make that $1 billion. Actually, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So Toshi, so going back to the vaccines then, because you did just bring this up in what you've been studying, like on the the banking systems and stuff. What ultimately do you think the vaccine then, for example, was distributed over just financial gain? So this was all just down to money?
No, so it's actually religious extremism that we're dealing with. It's literally a 3,000-year-old conspiracy that was first concocted in the book of Samuel. 1 Samuel 15:3 that was written 1028 BC, and you'll see all the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu and all these other, what they call so-called Jews, but they're not Jews, because what they're actually described in Revelation as those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews but are not and do lie. So who are they then? Well, if you actually look at the book of Deuteronomy that was written 1400 BC, it tells you who they are. They are Rephaim. That's what they're named. They are Rephaim. They are the followers of Remphan and the worshippers of Baal, Moloch, and Baphomet. And they
Satanists.
Yeah,
or Luciferians, I suppose.
They believe that they are the descendants of Satan. And just to fill you in on that quickly. The story, so this is what they believe. They believe that we were created. We are the result of artificial insemination. There is no mammal like us on this planet. We are completely different to all the animals that exist here, and we are also the only species that has different blood types, and that indicates genetic engineering, and the story goes that the very first successful human that they engineered was called Lilith. She was a female because they couldn't control male or female at the time. And then after that came Adam. Now, procreation between Lilith and Adam wasn't very successful at all. Lilith ended up going out into the wilderness, and just leaving. But then they created Eve. Now, before Adam and Eve could actually procreate, this lot believed that Satan came down and had relations with Eve and created Cain. And later, Adam and Eve had Abel. But because Cain was actually, fathered by Satan, and he was a murderer from the beginning, he ended up, murdering his own brother. Then he was cast out, and then you have the land of Canaan, which was a Canaanites, which is basically all the descendants of Cain, and then you have the descendants of Seth, who is the sort of next in line after Abel, that are created from Adam and Eve, and basically this lot think that they've actually said this. They believe that Satan had a war with God 78,000 years ago, and that Satan was banished down on earth. And so they believe that all the other bloodlines from Adam and Eve are the creation of God, and they want them wiped out. and that is us. And their excuse is that God gave an instruction to them in the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel 15:3, that said, "Now go and destroy Amalek, kill everyone, spare no one, kill every man, woman, child, suckling baby, calf, camel, sheep, and donkey." And this is why they're spraying the skies, poisoning the earth, poisoning the seas, killing children, dropping bombs on hospitals. They have absolutely no morals whatsoever, like literally none. And they get their inspiration from the Baphomet, which is another an idol that they worship. And Baphomet is all about inversion, subversion, and perversion. So they literally look at everything in society and they try to invert, subvert, and pervert it. They're literally. So this is why up is down, left is right. You got chicks with dicks, men can get pregnant. All this bullshit. This is what they're pumping into society, and they're doing this through the control of economics. They are controlling all the media, they're controlling the politicians, they're controlling the resources, they're controlling arms manufacturers. So, I mean, they even instigated World War I and World War II that were actually outlined in Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini, written on the 15th of August, 1871, where he outlined how it would take 3 world wars to bring about a totalitarian one world government and new world order. And this is why they brought about the Nixon shock on the 15th of August, 1971, because it was the 100-year anniversary of Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini, outlining how it would take 3 world wars to bring about a totalitarian one world government and a new world order, which would fulfill their religious prophecy, because they knew that once they had control of the financial system, everything else would just fall like dominoes. And this is why Henry Kissinger said, who controls the food supply controls the people, who controls the energy can control whole continents, who controls money controls the world. So what he was doing was in that statement, telling us indirectly the order in which they're doing things. First of all, they're going for control of the economy and the financial system. Then they're going to go for the energy companies and utilities. And last of all, they're going to go for the food supply and the farmers, which is what we're seeing now.
So, just based on even what you're saying, that they're just, according to even that theory, they're here just to wipe us out because they believe that's what they're supposed to be doing. Do they have no offspring or any people, well, what would be categorized as humans on the planet right now, genetically related to them?
Yeah. So they want a world of their own. They want all of us gone. This is why they're absolutely fanatical about finding out people's bloodlines. I mean, this is why, for example, when you had Ancestry.com, they were saying, "Oh, we will never sell your data or medical records." And it's like, well, hold on a minute, you just sold your company, and your company included everybody's DNA and medical records and everything like that, because they're tracing all the bloodlines of Satan, if you want. And trying to recruit them. And what they'll do is, because they own the central banking system, they will either offer you a bribe, and if you don't take the bribe, then they'll threaten you with threats of violence or blackmail. That's how they keep everybody in check.
Even if you're one of their own?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so if they are indeed, what's the ultimate goal here? Just to get rid of humanity that's not related to them? So it's like, what is the goal here, do you think, for them?
Yeah. The goal is they want a world of their own because they believe that that's what God has promised them. God apparently said to them, go and destroy Amalek, and anybody who is not them, they consider to be Amalek.
Okay.
Which is pretty much, all of Western society and every any other religion, literally, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, you name it, they want us all gone.
Okay, so even based on that theory, would God not intervene? This is based on people believing in God, first of all, just for our listeners out there. But would God not try and intervene and stop it if he hadn't then said it?
Well, this is the thing. So, what and who is your definition of God? They are talking about God in the plural, and if you read the sort of Hebrew text, they describe God as Elohim, but actually, when you interpret the word Elohim, that's plural. So it translates to shining ones, and it looks like in our past, when you look at the Sumerian texts and things like that, there were multiple beings, multiple shining ones that came down that sort of like, showed us how to, for example, showed us how to taught us agriculture back in the day, like in ancient Mesopotamia. And if you look at some of the I suppose carvings on the rocks, really, it sort of shows us being showed information, how to make things. Like, for example, like the cutting of roots, the molding of metal, the beautifying of the eyelids, things like this. So it looks like, if you go back to ancient text and around the time of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest story known to man, it looks like there has been paleo contact, and their definition of God is one of these creatures, for want of
like
a better
an
word,
Anunnaki, for example.
Absolutely, yeah, Anunnaki. And it sounds like his name was Yahweh. And so Yahweh seems to have been a junior Elohim, because all the other Elohim were given people and land, whereas he was given just people and no land, which has obviously caused conflict, because he's, it's just the ego, really, at the end of the day.
He's a little bit upset.
Yeah. He's a little bit upset. And so, obviously, 78,000 years ago, he's meant to have had a bit of a Barney, with God, and God said, right, you can have a planet Earth, but I'm gonna create, humans on there, my own creations, and he obviously wasn't too happy with that. But it was just like, well, fill your boots if you wanna try and control and do what you want. But this is where I'm learning about the ether. So, for example, the ether was actually removed from the periodic table by Rockefeller, because they're purposely hiding the ether, because that's where we get free energy from. And also it explains it explains phenomenon like telepathy, like remote viewing. So all these things can be done if you actually understand the ether and how our pineal glands are connected to them. But that's kind of like another story. We've got more important things to deal with right now, which is like this, like trying to literally kill us.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so starting then going back to the economic control, what type of things have you noticed, like pattern-wise? Because I know that you have obviously an educational background in finance as well, which does obviously help you see some key patterns going on here. Financially, what type of things do you feel that they're doing to us right now to control, that people can be aware of, so they're more enlightened to this information, so they know what's going on?
So the most important thing to recognize is asset stripping. That's what they're really doing. They're asset stripping us so that they end up controlling all the world's resources. And this is what fiat currency is used as a tool for. It's a tool for asset stripping. So what they've done is there are only four things that circulate within an economy. You've got goods that are manufactured, you've got services that are provided, you've got commodities that are only ever extracted or grown, and then you've got securities that are certified. That are secured entitlement. So anything that secures your entitlement to something else. So when Henry Kissinger said, "Who controls money controls the world," you only need a medium of exchange when a third party comes into trade and an economy is created. Because prior to a third person coming in, and when there's just two individuals, they can barter, they can swap like for like. And what a medium of exchange enables is that it enables specialization. So rather than you literally having to be, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and everything else, in order to survive, you can focus on specializing in producing and growing en masse, certain things. And when you produce things en masse, they become cheaper because you develop economies of scale and, production lines and things like that. Rather than having to literally do everything yourself, you can outsource, all of these things. And it's a medium of exchange that effectively enables outsourcing. So you can then create a market where you have access to resources. So this lot were just like, oh, right, well, if we can somehow control that medium of exchange that controls the flow of resources, then we can control everything, and we can pretty much guide everything into our control. So what they've had to do is they've had to wait for money to emerge, and then they've turned it into an illegal security offering. So, and again, going back to religious text, if you go back to the story in the book of Daniel about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he dreams about this giant statue that's initially made of iron and clay, then bronze, and then silver, and then gold. And what happens is a rock comes down and takes the base of this giant out, and everything crumbles. And my interpretation of this is probably what was used as a medium of exchange. So initially, sort of, there were clay tablets, and there were bits of iron that people would use in the Iron Age and stuff like that. You've then got bronze, which probably represents the Roman Empire, with all the bronze items that they created. Then you've got silver, which I think probably represents the city of London. Hence, you've got sterling, pound, silver, and the financial power that London had on the rest of the world. And then you've got gold, which is what the world eventually settled on as a worldwide medium of exchange, which is represents probably the Federal Reserve, and then the Bretton Woods Agreement, where they stole all the gold in World War II. And then you've got the Nixon shock, which is when he removed the US dollar from the gold standard. And the moment you did that, all these certificates, which are securities, which are certified claims on gold, they became economically worthless security offerings. They became fraud because they didn't secure your entitlement. And this lot can just simply print paper or plastic from nothing, or literally make up numbers on a keyboard as they do now. And basically, there is no resources they can't afford. There's no politician they can't bribe. There's no hitman they can't pay. They have an unlimited amount of economic power, which is why they are asset stripping us due to the effects of inflation. And when they print currency and they distribute it out to their own network, you just simply get the increase in the rich and poor divide. And that's what's going on right now. And what they're doing is they're taxing us from this fraud that they're creating, which means all taxes is fraudulent as well. Because if they want currency from us that they print from nothing, they can just go to a bank and get the bank to print it. They don't need it from us. They're purposely making us poor and tired and weak so that we're unable to fight the corruption that they are bringing in.
Because taking the Federal Reserve for an example, they are supposed to hold an amount of assets there that they're then circulating, are they not?
Well, that was the story, but then obviously you've got the first of all, you've got the Nixon shock, which removed the US dollar from the gold standard after they'd stolen all the gold in World War II, and then brought about the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, which backed all European currencies by the US dollar, which made the US dollar the reserve currency. But then they removed the actual gold. They removed money from the dollar, making the dollar economically worthless, and every other currency backed by it. So now you have a small group of people with an unlimited amount of economic power, and if they've got bad intentions, which we've now found out they certainly do have, we're going to find ourselves in a lot of trouble.
And then where it concerns England.
Yeah, so the reason we call our currencies pounds is because pound is a unit measurement of weight, and it was meant to be a sterling pound of silver. So it's like how many pounds? How many pounds of silver do you have? Sterling silver. That's what it was. But then that was transferred onto the gold standard, and then later transferred onto the US dollar, and then the the gold was removed from US dollar backing. Making all British pound sterling currency and all US dollar securities fraud, because they can print this shit from nothing, which means they're going to steal all the land and all the resources. So if you're a group of people and you want to and you want a world of your own and you want to get rid of everybody else living on this planet, the only way you're going to do it is through economic terrorism, and that's what we're experiencing right now.
So even during lockdown, for example, without saying the key word there, it was quite bizarre what everyone's, running around to go and get as, a matter of resource. And what's your opinion on what happened during lockdown? And then the prices going up and everyone obviously being made to stay inside.
Well, they're just simply trying to destroy small businesses. That's all it is, because all the all the cabal owned businesses, they did amazing during COVID because they were allowed to stay open. The likes of McDonald's and all the major supermarkets and the fuel stations, ramping prices. I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. If you've got a killer virus on the loose, what you don't want to do is concentrate people into concentrated areas where it can spread. You want to dilute everything. But by closing small businesses, but allowing, mainstream businesses like McDonald's to stay open, and all the local supermarkets, because all your local high street shops have been shut, what you're doing is you're concentrating, which means you're going to increase the infection rate, which was absolutely ridiculous. So it had nothing to do with a virus at all. It was just simply a way to try and wipe out small businesses, get them indebted through these COVID loans, and then when they were just like, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, 2 years later, and then when the economy hasn't opened up and all these businesses that have got these COVID loans are meant to be paying them back, how can they pay them back when the businesses are still shut 2 years later? It was an absolute
no, exactly. Yeah. So obviously you were a small business owner. Did that affect your business during that time?
So I was quite lucky in the fact that I ran a property business, a rental property business. So I just simply had rent coming in. Everybody was enjoying the nice weather, and whether or not they got COVID loans or they're on furlough, everybody could pay the rent. The only people who struggled were small business owners. That's it. They're the ones that they were targeting, purposely trying to shut them down.
Okay. And then, so just going back to this, and you're just based on the biblical text that we were talking about earlier, this is ultimately an alien species, I suppose. That's what we're talking about, that you believe are here, obviously trying to wipe us out.
Well, I mean, I'm only saying this is based on my research and my hypothesis of what I've learned. This isn't, I'm literally trying to I'm trying to make sense of all the information that I've accumulated. So this isn't anything that I believe. This is I'm telling you, this is what it appears that they believe. So this is what we're dealing with. And so the reason I studied all this is because if you want to come up with a solution, you first of all have to fundamentally understand the problem. Like, what is it we're dealing with? And so that's why I studied the problem in order to, see an eventual solution.
So what do you think the solution is?
So the solution is going back to a true monetary system, to remove their economic power that they're using for these nefarious activities. And this is what Bitcoin was all about. Because money has to be a commodity, because a commodity is the only thing that has common value in an economy, where something with common value has the same value to anyone everywhere, no matter where they are, because it's common. There may be different values in different markets, but the use case of what it is still the same. You drink coffee, you buy gold maybe for jewelry and electronics and things like that. But no one has control over the creation of a commodity. There is no human barrier to entry. Anybody can either mine or grow a commodity. They can just simply move into different geographical areas that might help them produce it, but there's no human barrier to entry to accessing a commodity. And so what happens is, when a commodity eventually sort of monopolizes a market due to its ability to be used as a medium of exchange, it becomes a monopoly commodity and recognized as money. That's where the word money comes from. It's a commodity that's been used as a medium of exchange, that's outcompeted all the other commodities that everybody has settled on, and that's when it becomes recognized as money. And so the Bitcoin white paper, for the first time in history, actually expressed how to commoditize digital data. So if you can somehow make digital data valuable, it means that you can send that data as fast and as efficient as light. And this cabal realized, they were like, oh, hold on a minute, it looks like somebody has actually created a digital commodity. Whoa, if people start using a money that is outside of our control, outside of the central banking system, and if they start using a commoditized digital network for all of their digital data requirements, it means that we can't control it, we can't censor it. They can post anything they want on it and it can't be deleted. The truth can be tracked and traced, which means that we can't deceive people anymore. So this is why this is why they sped things up, because if you read the SPARS pandemic, they actually planned COVID for 2025, but they ended up bringing it forward to 2020 because the neutral organic growth phase of the Bitcoin network finished in January 2020. So when they realized this, they panicked and they were like, oh, hold on a minute, jeepers, we didn't realize this. So the neutral organic growth phase of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network is about to finish. If they start using a money outside of a central banking system, we could be in real trouble. How can we possibly prevent the spread of the use case? Let's bring in economic lockdown. Boom. And that's what COVID was really about.
Right. Okay. So I get it. So basically, it was supposed to happen in 2025. That was when it was apparently pre-planned for, from your research. And the reason why they've brought it forward is to stop people going on a blockchain and trading crypto.
Not trading crypto, using it. Using it as a medium of exchange. Yeah. So there are two types of people in finance. You have investors that put value in, and you have traders that take value out. Traders are literally like financial parasites. They produce nothing. They manufacture nothing. They do nothing. Or they're literally like financial pickpockets, because you have a group of traders all trading with each other. When a trader says, oh, I've done really well, I've traded this and I've traded that. Well, what have you produced? What have you made? And if you haven't produced anything, you haven't made anything, you haven't manufactured anything, what are you saying that you've profited from? Well, what you've done is you've picked the pockets of loads of other traders. So for every one trader that does really well, there are 10 traders that lose. But you never hear traders bragging about the fact of how they've lost out on a trade. So eventually what traders do is they pickpocket each other's pockets until there's only one trader left. So trading is actually a zero-sum game, which is why the cabal have encouraged the trading of Bitcoin, because they don't want people to actually understand how you use it and where it gets its value from. They just want you. They just want you to think that it's some speculative bullshit asset.
What would be the benefit for, say, the controlling forces that would be to have people, say, on the blockchain or on the decentralized systems trading currency, but still not knowing what it really is or what's the actual technicalities behind it, as opposed to right here, kind of, not on the digital space, but right here in the 3D?
One, if you are trading it, then you have to have your coins on an exchange, which means you're not holding them. So that means if the Bitcoins are not in a non-custodial wallet that you have control over, then your coins are on an exchange, and that exchange controls your coins. They can run off with your coins because you've given your coins to them freely. So if the exchange wants to run off with your coins, they can do. That's it. So one, they don't want you holding the coins, because if you're not holding them, you can't use them for what they're actually meant for. And all you're doing is you're pickpocketing other traders who are trying to accrue value from it. But the only way you can really accrue value is if the value is going up. So that value is actually derived from a use case. If something is useful, it's valuable. If something is useless, it's worthless. So if something is useless, there's no reason for anybody to buy it, and therefore you get speculators in the market, because the price goes up and down, and that means that it's no good as a medium of exchange, because the price is constantly going up and down. And if you're a business, you need a steady income, you need steady profits, so that you can restock your goods once you've sold out. You need capital to reinvest into your business. So if your capital is worth $1,000 one day and then like $100 the next, that's no good for you. That's no good for you at all. So what they do is they control the cryptocurrency market by pumping and dumping it using Tether. So Tether is a cryptocurrency that they created from nothing, that they claimed is pegged one-to-one to the US dollar. They create this thing from nothing, pump it into the market goes up, then traders sell out and the market comes down again. And this is what's been going on for like the last 10 years because they want to distract people away from its actual use case.
Okay, which is?
Using the networks for all of your digital requirements so that you have sovereignty over your data. Because at the moment, what we're doing is we're making digital content right now as we're speaking, and we are speaking through an infrastructure, a network of fiber optic cables, which goes to a server, and the server provides the ability for us to communicate. But because this digital content is being created through a corporate server, whoever it is that owns that server owns this digital content that we're creating. And they can then delete it if they don't like the political opinions that we may be expressing. So what we really should be doing is using the Bitcoin network to actually create this digital content so that we own and control it and they can't delete it or censor it. That's what the Bitcoin network is for. So what you would do is we would be paying in micropayments to have this conversation over the Bitcoin network, because the miners would process our uploads, which is this video creation, onto the Bitcoin network if we paid for it with micropayments in Bitcoin. So we buy Bitcoin in order to upload digital content onto the network where it can't be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, and it can't be censored. That's why we use it, because
onto the blockchain.
Absolutely, onto the blockchain, because anything that is uploaded onto the Bitcoin network that goes through blockchain technology, where all the information is linked together via hash numbers and indexed in blocks, that information is not susceptible to cybersecurity hacks or virus software, and there's no central point of authority, control, or failure that can turn it off. That's the whole point of Bitcoin. It's for the first time ever immutable data, and the reason it's immutable is because the network is economically sustained through a digital asset. So miners compete to process your transactions because you pay for your transactions with a small payment in Bitcoin where your data can't be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. And that service is huge, because imagine if you are a financial institution, if you're an internet bank, or if you're a Visa or a MasterCard or anything like that, or Amazon or Facebook, and your entire business is digital. You cannot afford to lose a single record of any of your customers' transactions. And if it's digital is just simply bits of light held on a server that can just simply be turned off. Whereas if you upload your digital creations onto the Bitcoin network, where it goes through blockchain technology, where it's linked to somebody else's previous bit of data via a hash number, and then that chain extends from a worldwide distributed, economically competitive server network, there is no way to delete the data, and there's no way to turn it off. And
the data, once the code's made for it, it's there forever, isn't it? Whether you lose the code or not, you know that's on the blockchain. That's correct, isn't it? So they call that, what is that? There is a term for it when they're creating all these. There was another term. It'll come to me, but. Bitcoin, for example, the only issue I see with using that as something that you want to work with to help people is the fact that it has a limit on how much of it is actually available. It's not unlimited amounts of Bitcoin for mining. So how would that be sustainable on a long-term basis?
Well, you know how fiat currency is infinitely inflated? Yeah, well, Bitcoin is effectively infinitely divisible.
Okay.
So it can go on forever.
But the people that own the Bitcoin right now, if there's only X amount of it up for mining, and there's majority holders that are holding the majority of it, and there's only a little bit left, let's say, for mining, how just by inflating it, you think would be a sustainable way? Or do you think that it might be an idea to maybe create a currency or a different currency that was for the benefit of everyone, say on the blockchain, that you could run these type of projects through that had no cap on how much could be mined? It was infinite as opposed to a cap.
Well, so this is the issue. In order for Bitcoin to be a commodity, it cannot have any central point of authority or control anywhere in the system. And if the asset itself can be inflated, then there is a central source somewhere inflating it. So it has to be fixed in supply but infinitely divisible, so that nobody can actually fundamentally alter the fundamental value of it by either inflating it or deflating it. Has to be fixed. Has to be fixed so that nobody can tamper with it.
It has to be a fixed supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's not fixed, you've got somebody manipulating it.
But if it is fixed and somebody's holding a lot of Bitcoin, they can manipulate it surely just by what they're holding. So if they decide to sell out, which does happen, so the fluctuation of the currency, how much it's worth, if they decide to sell a load of their Bitcoin onto into the crypto exchange on the blockchain, then that ultimately reduces how much it's worth at that time. It floods the market. It knocks some people out because it is actually decreasing the value of the Bitcoin. And then they go back in and they buy it at the low and it goes back up again. That's how it works, as far as I know.
Yeah, but this is where you're thinking that the only thing it can be used for is trading. This is what the cabal want people. They want you to think that it's just a speculative asset that does nothing, that you trade. What they don't want you to know is that it can actually be used as money. So you're not actually like, if you've got something that's valuable, why on earth would you exchange it into fiat currency that is economically toxic? Fiat currency goes down in value. And then also, if you exchange it into fiat currency, well, then Big Brother also wants a massive cut from that in terms of capital gains.
Yeah.
So why on earth would you do that? What you would do with Bitcoin is you would use it as money. You spend Bitcoin. That's what it's meant to be, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Because it's economically positive. So if you bought Bitcoin, let's say, at like $10 and it's now worth $100,000, which sort of great coin is right now, then you've got 900 or $100,000 minus the 10 worth of equity in that. So therefore you would be much better off spending that equity rather than converting it into fiat currency, where Big Brother wants a massive capital gain and you're back in using the central banking system. You're meant to use it as money. So if you've got Bitcoin that's going up in value because it's fixed in supply, shopkeepers and small businesses are more likely to accept it as a medium of exchange rather than, filthy fiat or dirty dollar that decreases in value. They would be offering goods and services in exchange for this because it's a valuable commodity.
Because there are some places that do accept Bitcoin. And I know even now, like let's say Revolut Bank, for example, they have on there their cryptocurrency. You can trade, and you can also trade in stocks and invest your money. But they do have a digital card where you can spend your crypto through them with like a very, very, very low fee. I think it was like 0.5%, something ridiculous, where you're spending your crypto as if it was a debit card, on every day. But I definitely agree that I think a lot of businesses should be able to accept cryptocurrencies as a form of payment if they're saying that there is some type of monetary, tag attached to it. Then why shouldn't we be able to spend it? And why should we have to take it out and declare it and start paying taxes on it?
Well, another reason they don't want people using it is because if you're using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, you are outside government jurisdictions. There's no tax owed. There's no tax owed on Bitcoin. The only the only tax is owed is on fiat currency. If you're because he who creates owns. So if you're using, central bank issued currency, and the government decides, well, actually, we've got jurisdiction over the central bank because it's in our country, and therefore we've decided that you must owe tax on this. But they can attempt to enforce that. What they can't do is impose taxes on a jurisdiction that they are outside of, and they are outside the jurisdiction of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is purely private. They have literally got no right whatsoever to ask you what your Bitcoin holdings are, or for you to pay them in taxes at all. That's why they don't want it. And when you were saying before, what you were saying something about the traders, people sort of flooding the market with with Bitcoin. Well,
to cause a crash. Well, with every currency that's on the blockchain. Yeah.
So again, there's a big difference between money and currency. Money is a commodity. Currency is a security. And if you are issuing securities, then SEC versus W.J. Howico 1946 comes into play to make sure that it is a genuine security and not securities fraud. So via the Nixon shock, when they removed the US dollar from the gold standard, the US dollar then became securities fraud, because it doesn't secure your entitlement to any claim on gold. So this is it. It's all fiat currency is fraud, because it's securities fraud as defined by SEC versus W.J. Howico 1946. And it's the same with all these bullshit cryptocurrencies. They're all securities because they're all issued by a central authority. And when they say, this can't be a security because it doesn't fit the Howey test that defines a security. Well, if it's not a security, and it's not a good because it's not manufactured, and it's not a service because it's provided, and it's not a commodity because it's not extracted or grown, and it's not a security, well, congratulations, what you've just made is securities fraud. They're saying, it doesn't fit the definition of a security. Yeah, that's because you've made fraud. You've made this bullshit token up from nothing that you centrally control, which means it has no common value.
Literally, yeah. Anyone can go on there at this point and make a token.
Well, yeah, but that's fraud. It's securities fraud.
Yeah.
But because everything is corrupt right now, and the regulators, the financial regulators, are paid and funded for by the banks themselves in order to protect themselves from their own fraud that they're perpetrating on everybody. That's how big this problem is that we're stuck with. The only way we're going to get out of this is converting back to a true money, which is why they've allowed this shitcoin market to exist, and why they're trying to subvert everybody away from Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin now has the ticker symbol BSV. And they've artificially suppressed the price down to like $30, but it's the only blockchain that still has a chain of signatures intact that goes right the way back to the Genesis block, that still uses the #1 legacy address. That is what Bitcoin is. So the BTC that's $100,000 right now, and all these others like BCH and all these other forks, they're all securities fraud. They're all fraud in order to subvert the public away from the genuine Bitcoin, because they don't want people to know that Bitcoin can be used as money and it's outside of their jurisdiction.
So your advice would be stick to Bitcoin.
Well, I can't give any financial advice, obviously, but what I can do is I can try and give people information on it so that they can make an informed decision. So therefore, we get fully informed consent. But this is what I'm trying to explain to people. Bitcoin is a digital commodity, and it's a commodity because the token itself is extracted from the Bitcoin network, which is a commoditized digital network. So if you can somehow upload your digital information onto the network that the token came from, and you do that by attaching a payment in Bitcoin with your upload that the miners then compete for to process, your data can't be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, which means it can't be censored, and also means it can't be denied. So it means that this lot can't deceive everybody, because you can see what the truth is, because what they do, the truth comes out, this lot then invert it, subvert it, pervert it, and people don't know where the story stemmed from, and therefore they don't know what the truth is. Whereas with Bitcoin, because it's a time-stamped server, you can see the trail of origin back to the source, and it's right, that's the source there. That's what really happened. And you can see it. This is why the cabal don't want it, because they lie, cheat, and steal everything, and they've got no moral compass whatsoever. This is their religion.
With Bitcoin, then, so say for example earlier I said I can get a crypto card, and I can spend my crypto like directly. Once, let's say I had Bitcoin and I was spending from that asset, but here, like down the corner, and they accept obviously debit card payments, and I'm using a crypto card and I'm using my Bitcoin. Once I make that transaction, where is the Bitcoin, or well, it would even be just a fractional amount of it, go to? So now you've just made the transaction to obviously, purchase an item. They've received what they believe is obviously money into their, well, it's digital currency, into their real life bank accounts here, nothing to do with the blockchain. What happens to the actual, just so people can understand, what happens to the actual crypto? So the Bitcoin, for example, that you had just used, where does it, because it now no longer exists, does it? Because it's played its part, what it was supposed to do, to get from there to the ultimate end destination, me making a transaction with it.
Yeah. So what happens with those crypto cards is that your crypto is automatically dumped, as in sold on an exchange for the market value at that time for fiat currency. And all it is you're just simply you're transferring fiat currency to the retailer. So you're not actually spending, which is
your
what they
Bitcoin
want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they're holding the Bitcoin. Yeah. So they're actually holding what you think you've just spent. You've actually transferred it. Oh wow!
Well, you've sold it onto an exchange. They literally do they do an immediate conversion into fiat currency, and you send fiat currency from your card to their card, which is obviously going to be Visa or Mastercard. So you're just back in there. You're back in the central banking system again.
So there's no point. So how could we bring about this change? Would it be everyone would have to agree to be obviously using Bitcoin and doing it in that way? They would have to have shops that actually accept it as the true currency without a conversion, as you're saying.
Oh yeah. So well, again, so this is what will happen, and this is what the cabal are trying to. This is why I don't show my face on interviews and stuff like that, because the cabal don't want this information that I'm giving out. So what will happen in the future is that because Bitcoin is fixed in supply, the value increases over time. So you want to be holding something that increases in value. And the way you hold something is by offering a service in exchange for Bitcoin, but the number one legacy address Bitcoin. So that goes into your Bitcoin wallet, and you can see the value of that Bitcoin increasing over time. If you've just simply accepted a payment via a crypto card from Visa or Mastercard, all you're left with is pounds and pence or dollars or fiat currency, which just simply stays in your wallet. You're not seeing that value you're not seeing the value increase. So you actually need to be holding Bitcoin in order to be accruing value in it. So if you're a small business like a hairdresser or barbers, if you're charging 30 quid for a haircut, you can either accept 30 quid in fiat currency, which is economically toxic and goes down in value over time, which means that all the prices around you are going up. House prices are going up, fuel's going up, petrol's going up. Inflation is eating away that. Or you can accept £30 worth of Bitcoin at the time and see that Bitcoin that you've got is fixed in supply and therefore actually increasing in value. So if I was a small business, I'd be like, actually, I will take that economic asset rather than that, economic piece of dog shit. And this is what the cabal are so scared of, because if we start using a monetary system that is outside their jurisdiction, that actually increases in value, which means we're not stuck on the hamster wheel and struggling to put food on the table and roof over our heads, suddenly it's just, hold on a minute, what are you actually doing to us? We can start asking questions because we've got time on our hands. We can raise our kids properly instead of sending them to school where they're being taught about, how they can identify as a dog if they want. All that crap. That's what they're doing.
Okay. So ultimately, so spreading this information and making people aware of this, ultimately it's up to them to obviously do their own research and decide what they want to do. But what can you see in our future? What would you like to see in our future? Everyone using Bitcoin.
I want to see the whole
For you
world
personally.
running.
Yeah.
I want to see the whole world running on the Bitcoin network, because then we can see exactly what's going on. We can see truth, and we can see who it is that's committing all these crimes on us. Because you don't have a lie on its own. The lie is a derivative of the truth. The truth has to convert. The truth has to come first, and then you invert, subvert, and pervert the truth. And that's what this lot are doing. It's the old adage of divide and conquer. Everybody knows, united we stand, divided we fall. But now it's got, diversity is our strength. What an absolute load of bullshit that is. It's literally just bullshit that they're feeding us over and over and over. We've just got to hope that people aren't dumb enough to fall for all that shit. But unfortunately, at the moment, because of the probably poor quality diet, that we're eating, and also the bullshit that's in the mainstream press that this lot own, it's very hard for people to see the truth. But this is what I keep trying to tell people: people will unite due to economic incentive, because you can either be in an economically toxic economy where you're using a medium of exchange that asset strips you of your time and your resources, or you can move into an economy that is economically positive for you, where we're using an asset that increases in value over time. And not only that, we're actually using a network where the truth can't be subverted. So, for example, with the judiciary being completely, criminal at the moment, what you want is that you want to capture all these events, and you want to live stream everything on the Bitcoin network, so that everybody can see it in real time, and they can also watch it back after it's been recorded and uploaded, and it can't be subverted, inverted, perverted, cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. That's what we want. So imagine going into a courtroom and suddenly you've got a camera on a judge, and the judge makes a ruling which is completely against the Constitution. Or you've got a copper knocking on your door. Oh, hold on a minute. So who's the victim here? Oh, don't worry, there's no victim. Oh, well, who's the claimant then? Oh, there's no claimant either. Well, why have you stopped me then? What do you want? Oh, you've committed an offence. All right, so you're saying I've committed an offence, but there's no victim and there's no claim here. So that makes you the claimant, and you're saying I've committed an offence, and no one in this country has the right to be offended whatsoever. Which means that is malfeasance in public office. And oh, by the way, have you turned up wearing a policeman's outfit? Oh, so in 1995, all the Crown agents were converted into the Companies Act, which means there are no public servants, which means you are now impersonating a police officer, which is malfeasance in public office and a criminal act all in itself. What's your name? That's what we want. That we need to serve justice back on them in the way that they're subverting it on us. And the only way we can do that is with the Bitcoin network. So just recently, somebody sent me a video on YouTube of how this one guy in Sheffield has, I think he's got like decades worth of information on the Child Protective Services, and how they failed all the children and how it's being covered up, by the government and the establishment. Well, the police literally, I think it was last night, literally just went into his home and they confiscated all of his years and years and years of research and on this corruption. So, the police would have gone into his home without a warrant, absolutely, totally unlawful, and they've taken all his stuff because we know that it's all the paedophiles that are in Parliament. That's pretty much it. Oh. Yeah. A rant over.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Toshi.
You're welcome.
For that. Yeah, more than. Okay, so just going back now to the Bitcoin and the blockchain, just so that people understand. Bitcoin is on its own blockchain on the blockchain system, or how is it exactly working, so people that are already, say, investing in crypto, not realizing what's actually going on, can understand how this decentralized system's working?
So I mean, again, the cabal like to put disinformation out there to confuse and subvert people away from it. What people have to realize is that Bitcoin is a commoditized network. And it's commoditized by two fundamental structures. First of all, it's on an economically competitive distributed server foundation. So that means that there is no single central point of control or failure. And that's it. The second thing they need to know is that all the information that extends out from this economically competitive distributed server network is linked together via hash numbers and indexed in blocks, which just means that the data can't be deleted. That's literally it. So people think, oh, blockchain means decentralized. It's not. Blockchain is just simply a way of linking data together and indexing them in chunks of data, which they refer to as blocks. So if you want to find something and you go, oh, well, I know this transaction was in block number, blah, 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 whatever, you can go back and find it. You can find the upload because it's referenced via index numbers, which are block numbers. That's all it is. So all it is you've got what they call a blockchain, which is a chain of a chain of blocks full of data, which is all linked together via hash numbers, extending from an economically competitive distributed server foundation, so that chain has no single central point of failure. That's literally all it is. And data can only be commoditized one way, which means there will only be one digital commodity. That's it. So in order to subvert people away from it, they had to steal the ticker symbol, place the ticker symbol on their own central bank created blockchain, which is now referenced as BTC, but it doesn't carry the number one legacy address. The central bank BTC legacy addresses start with the number 3 or the letters BC, whereas you only want the number 1, and the only chain of digital signatures together that is still intact is BSV, and that's the original Bitcoin protocol that goes right the way back to the Genesis block. And all they've done is subverted people away from it by stealing the ticker symbol and then pumping the price through the use of Tether, so that people think, oh, the market has decided this must be the original Bitcoin. Well, it's not. But Satoshi Nakamoto, when he designed Bitcoin, I would say he is a savant. And he also used to be a pastor in his previous in his history, and so he knows who these people are. He knows that they're of the sin. He knows that they are of the synagogue of Satan, and he knew that they were going to subvert his creation while it was going through this period of neutral organic growth, where he couldn't come out and tell people who he was or what Bitcoin was actually used for. And so what he did is he designed Bitcoin with a memory pool. And a memory pool is where all the transactions go before they're indexed in a block and put onto the blockchain. Now, this memory pool was suitable for worldwide transactions. So if you were a financial institution and you wanted to start using the Bitcoin network for all of your financial transactions, so they weren't susceptible to cybersecurity acts or virus software, you could use the Bitcoin network for everything. The Bitcoin network could literally surpass worldwide internet transactions. I think there was a quote that Satoshi wrote to Mike Hearn when he said, the internet processes about 13 million internet purchases per day worldwide. He said Bitcoin can already scale much larger than that with existing hardware for a fraction of the cost. It never really hits a scale ceiling. So he initially focused Bitcoin on financial transactions, because they're the ones that you really, really need to keep safe, that you can't, because a financial institution can be fined, I think, 10% of worldwide profits, gross profits, if they were to lose a financial record of one of their customers, because it's trust that underpins the financial system. So it's the financial institutions that should have embraced Bitcoin as it was when it was first designed with this memory pool, because it could literally absorb all the world's internet traffic. Well, all the world's internet payments, should I say. But what it couldn't do was absorb all the world's internet traffic, which is all the social media applications like HD streaming and emails and video conferencing and images and everything like that. So what he did, he left that scaling implementation in the bag. So he would only bring that in and start scaling it after Bitcoin had gone through this period of neutral organic growth, which finished in January 2020. So once this scaling implementation called Teranode comes onto the network and it can process terabytes of data, it will be able to absorb all the world's internet traffic. And we will be able to do like live HD streaming on the Bitcoin network like we're doing now. And this is what is coming. So anybody who is sort of in the truther movement that understands the issues that we're dealing with, like the block fee when Terranode goes live and small to medium-sized enterprises can start building applications on it, will go absolutely through the roof. And this Bitcoin that's currently at probably like $30 on the market will likely go to millions in a heartbeat, because all the miners will be moving their hash rate over on it, because the block fee will be through the roof when people start uploading all of their digital content onto the network. Because because the Bitcoin network is the only network where we can have sovereignty over our data, and it cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, deleted, or censored. And they know this. So miners chase profit, which means the miners will convert all of their hash rate away from the central bank bullshit, Greg coin that has got the ticker symbol BTC, onto the genuine Bitcoin that Satoshi Nakamoto purposely has created to be the next internet, which is like Web3 effectively. But that will only come to fruition when Terranode goes live, and that's due to happen maybe sometime this year, maybe next year, but it's coming real quick.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely be looking into that myself so I can keep up to date, because I quite like the idea of a new system.
We need news channels. We literally need an entire new system. So we need to take back control of the media, because this lot are nothing but propaganda through their bullshit, the bullshit mainstream rags and all this crap, that's on the centrally controlled platforms like YouTube and all this kind of stuff, where they censor any information that they don't particularly want out on it. We literally need and this the Bitcoin network can, for example, be used for supply chain analysis. So literally, if you want to track the supply chain of the products that you are selling, you can see when they were picked, who picked them, where they've been transferred to, if they were maybe held in storage for too long, if weight has been added to the bag, who they were, when they were first sold, how much they were sold for, has anybody been inflating the price, have middlemen been skimming off the top. You're going to be able to see all of this, because you can track everything on the blockchain on a timestamp server that can't be deleted. This is we literally need to take back everything. And another one is people's medical records. You want to see exactly what pharmaceutical toxic poison that they're trying to make you ingest or inject into you, and you want to know the doctor that's done it as well, so that you can hold them personally liable for poisoning you.
Yes. So then that goes back to the vaccines, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how long do you think? So just going back now, because I think overall with the blockchain and what you're describing, I personally think it's a good idea to get onto a system where everyone has a little bit more control over what they're doing. So when you were saying as well about the media, for example, there are a lot of creatives that cover news stories being taken down over the past few days. I don't know if you've heard, but they've released some new act or law regarding safeguarding children online, but it's now directly affecting, this is UK only, directly affecting what some creators are posting online. And instead of being tagged and kind of red flagged by the social systems that they're using, so say for example TikTok, they're actually in fact being red flagged by the government that their videos are not complying with this new rule, act, or law, whatever it's coming under. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Well, this is where we need to be outside of their jurisdiction, because if your content is on a server that is inside the UK somewhere, then they can go to the owners of those servers and say, you can red flag this content, we want it deleted. Whereas they can't do that on the Bitcoin network, because it is outside of their jurisdiction. They cannot censor it, and there's nothing they can do about it. But everybody who uses the network is still subject to the laws, of that country. But then, if the police put a claim in against you, well, that's where you need to know your rights. You need to know the law. You need to be able to stand up for yourself. Is there a victim involved? All right, if there's no victim, there's no crime. Is there a contract? If there's no contract, there's no obligation. If there's no claimant, there is no claim. Have I committed a crime? Who is making the claim against me? Because and will also, for anything to be a law, well, actually, I can tell you that. So if anything is being done while high treason is being committed, it immediately null and voids the law. And I can tell you that high treason was committed on the 1st of January 1973, when sovereignty was surrendered, the monarch deposed, and high treason committed. And ever since then, any act, statute, or legislation that they've tried to bring in since the 1st of January 1973 is null and void, because it's been done under treason, high treason. So that immediately nullifies everything that they're doing. So point that out to them, and that needs to be recorded and put on chain. So that when they say to you, "Oh, you've committed an offence," well, actually, you're committing high treason now. So what's your name? And this is where we need to start building an army. Literally, we need to start policing our country under the constitutional rights that we have. Because everything is corporate. Everything is corporate right now. There are no government. There are no government agents, because they've all been moved under the Companies Act, which means they're operating as private corporations. And a corporation only has obligations to its shareholders. So literally everything, there are no public servants right now, which is really scary, which is what they're using. And because they control the banks, they can economically incentivize anybody to do whatever they want. So the only way we're going to start to get out of this totalitarian dictatorship is by using a money that is outside of their jurisdiction.
And that's just phase one.
Well, it's phase one, but that's where their entire totalitarian dictatorship starts to fall down, because everything, all legal and political influence stem from economic power. And if their economic power is taken away from them because people start to realize that it's economically toxic and has such negative effects on society, they're gonna start fleeing from it. So all they need to do is start realizing what it's going to be used for. So people like me, when I get the information out there, suddenly you get people that are just like, oh, actually, this might be a lucrative investment. So you get investors coming in first because they understand it. So it's a bit like the internal combustion engine. So those who understood and were interested in the facilitation of the internal combustion engine were probably the first individuals to drive an automobile, to control an automobile, because they were interested in it, in the application of the engine. Like nowadays, all we teach is mirror signal maneuver, clutch, accelerator, brake. You don't need to know the workings of the internal combustion engine. So in the future, with Bitcoin, all you're going to do is swipe and send. You're not going to need to know all the information that I've got. I'm only giving this information so that those intelligent people are just like, I like the sound of that. You mean we can go into a courtroom and live stream the judge on the Bitcoin network where he can't deny what happened? That is really powerful. That's really powerful. Because we can now get the truth out there. There isn't going to be he said, she said, and the number of witnesses against, because you've got it streamed live. You've got it literally all timestamped and uploaded onto the Bitcoin network the moment it happened. So you can see the truth for yourself.
Wow. This is definitely a lot for our listeners, obviously, to take on board, and definitely do their own research, I think. As you even suggested earlier, where this starts. But I suppose the idea of a new system that everyone can obviously use, and it's in their full control. So as you were saying, this really goes back to assets being in your full control, that it's yours, it's nobody else's. Nobody can do anything with it. No one can take it from you. Would that be correct?
It's more about creating an immutable digital data record. That's it. Because previously everything was done on paper. But even if you do it on paper, it can be lost. Whereas at the moment, everything is done digitally, and that all digital records at the moment are held somewhere on a corporate server where they can delete it. They can wipe it. So literally what we need, the whole world needs to be using a commoditized digital network where digital information cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. That's it. All digital records need to be on the Bitcoin network. Everything that goes on, literally supply chains, emails, social media, everything, because it can still remain private, but it just can't be deleted. You can still what's the word? You can still scramble information. You can, hide it cryptographically, but you still have a public and private key that can release it. So you can still put things privately, put privately on the network and share the public key with people so they can see the information.
So it's ultimately down to an individual having the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can share it with whoever you want. You can make it public. You can make it private. The only thing is that digital information, it can maybe be. So, for example, CP. You probably know what those letters stand for. Like nobody wants that on the network. That is banned worldwide. So what you can do is you can put an international court order into the miners who would then hash that bit of information so that nobody could see it, because nobody wants it. So it just means that you can't add socially damaging perversions, onto the network. But you can, if you want to, you can scramble your own information and you can then share it privately. But the fact is, the information can't be deleted. That's the main thing.
Which is quite important, because then you're getting to see a real chain, a real chain record of events.
Yeah, and also what's really important is that anything that is uploaded onto the Bitcoin network has a digital signature with it. And that digital signature holds the individual accountable and responsible for how they use the network. And that can be proved because their digital signature is on the upload. So if somebody is, uploading inappropriate images of children, you'll be able to track them down through the chain of digital signatures. You will eventually be able to trace them because all the users of the Bitcoin network know each other. The chain of digital signatures effectively creates a private association of individuals. Like, I know that I've sent you a transaction, but I don't know who you've sent the following transaction to, but I can ask you. And if you want to reveal who you sent it to, you can, if you so wish, tell me. And so if I said to you, "Oh, look, Amanda, we're trying to trace the individuals behind this particular transaction that has been associated with child trafficking, gun running, drug dealing, whatever that's having a really negative effect on society. Will you help us track down and stamp out this activity that we don't want in our society?" Then you can say, "Yeah, I will help you. I sent this information, I sent this transaction to this individual here. Go and ask them." And then say, "Oh yeah, I sent this individual, I sent this this transaction to this individual here." So it's resource, energy, and economically intensive, but it's worth it if you want to stamp out all the disgusting, crimes and criminal activity that is happening in society.
So also it serves a dual purpose then, really?
Absolutely. It means that society can now be honest, because at the moment it's this lot that control absolutely everything, and all they do is lie, cheat, and steal everything. They literally have no moral compass whatsoever. And Bitcoin will economically incentivize everybody onto the network, because everybody will be using it, and everybody will be benefiting from the positive economic effects that it has. But this means that it will eventually expose their entire criminal network, which they've been building for the last 3,000 years. And that's what we need.
Is there anything you would like to leave our audience with today?
Well, obviously, I would like to say, well, if you listen to my other previous podcasts that I've done, it's very easy to track the modern day financial history right the way back to 1911, because 1911 is where this all started, the start of the modern day financial system, which was the creation of the central banks. So then you've got the meeting on Jekyll Island in 1910. You've got Rockefeller having a Standard Oil company taken off him in 1911. The sinking of the fraud of the Titanic in 1912, where they got rid of the main objectors to the central bank, which was Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and Jacob Astor. The creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, and then they orchestrated World War I in 1914, and then it's just literally a complete history. You can follow the money. It's really easy to follow the money from then on. But a lot of the things that people miss is that the baby boom period that went from 1945 to 1960, and this is what even a lot of economic historians have missed, what they'd done is during the Great Depression, they scooped up all the economically distressed corporations in America. And in the baby boom period from 1945 to 1960, they were flooding the economy with currency, which then overvalued all the corporations they picked up during the Great Depression, so they could then legitimately raise capital against them to then purchase all the European corporations that Hitler had decimated for them. That's what so many economists miss. But this is what they've done. They controlled London after the Battle of Waterloo. They got hold of America during the Great Depression. They got hold of Europe in the baby boom period after World War II. And then they got hold of China in the 1970s to 1990s. And then they got hold of the tiger economies in the 2000s. And now we're here having this conversation, after the very disturbing opening ceremony of the London 2012 Olympics, which conveniently mirrored COVID, which happened in 2020.
I did see that, online.
Yeah. So it's all linked together. It's all linked together.
Well, I know we've got so much more to unpack. So, Toshi, thank you so much for being here today. And we'll be back, obviously, with part 2. And thank you so much to everyone who was listening today. Please make sure to subscribe, whatever platform that you're listening on. And if you're on YouTube, can you hit the notification bell so you never miss a video? And we'll be back soon with part 2. Thank you, guys.
Just in relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page. Across the pond.
This is a Fox News alert. The Epstein files have been released.
Across the pond.
You're looking at now, sir. Everything that happens now is happening.
Very serious.
Now.